Tomorrow we have made it through another week.
Yes, we have. And last I checked, today is in fact your birthday.
Oh my!
Look
Wow.
what I got you.
You
Look what I
really,
got for
you
you.
really prepared.
I really prepared for this, you know? Very much so.
Look at you putting all that effort into making a cake for me.
Yeah. And now it's good.
When my wife and I started dating, it was in the height of Lost Mania, at least for me. And well, I think my first birthday we were dating, she made a Dharma cake for me. Dharma's one of the companies in Lost, and for people who haven't seen it, and she'd made it back at home, and then she drove down to school, and then when she got there, she had it in like a little plastic container, and she went to go lift it off so we could eat it, and took off everything on the cake.
Oh, no. Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah, it was pretty.
I'm
Well,
actually real.
it was terrible, but it was also pretty amazing, and like amazing in its horribleness. Like the cake then looked, like unedible, and you didn't want to eat it, and it was a sad way to start a Friday. But
It's just making me really sad thinking about ruined cake. Like I don't like
Yeah.
thinking about things like that.
No, either do I.
Now I know a lot of people don't know this because everyone makes jokes about how young you look and all of
Mhm.
that, but you are in fact today 47 years old. That's correct.
It's true. It's true.
Okay.
74. You gotta switch
Oh,
the
I got it
numbers
back.
around.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. No,
Like a
I
wish for Gary or something.
last in my 20s now, 29.
Damn. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about slowly just inching your way toward all trace of youth just being erased from your visage?
I mean, I guess I've got the baby face, so the facial
For
hair
now.
helps. Yeah, you're right. For now, I probably got at least. I don't know. I feel like I look like I could still be 19 if I shave. If I shave this off, I definitely would look like that again. So I feel like that will help me as I get older. And the Klepek clan, the men, as far even skipping generations and all that nonsense, like no one goes bald. So I'm not gonna lose my hair. So I'll have maybe I'm cursing myself now. We'll apparently have the curly locks lengthy going forward if I choose to keep them. And yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. 29 is a weird birthday because it's like 30 is when people you sit down and like share profound thoughts about what you've learned, or that's when people do stuff like that. And 29 is like you're just kind of caught in between.
You're right on the edge. You're right on the edge of becoming that 30, hitting the 30s, and then you're about 5 years away from no longer being a relevant demographic to most marketers.
Yeah, that's true. And I know for years as a games writer, I always got to kind of play the card of like, oh wow, he's so young and he's been doing this for so long. And now it's just that I've been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
Which isn't nearly as interesting to brag about than sneaking into, well, not sneaking, but getting into E3 when you're 17.
It's more that people just can't remember a time when you weren't doing this more than anything else.
Yeah, I guess that's true. That's a compliment in a way. I'll take that.
Yeah.
And as I was telling you, the high watermark for my birthday this year is don't go on a bike, which I can't because it's cold out and it's icy out, and my bike is at my parents' place.
Sure.
And don't break my collarbone. So
That's a good goal.
if I don't do either of those things today, then happy birthday to me. My 29th birthday was a complete success.
How icy is it outside right now in Chicago?
Not so bad. The ice
Okay.
isn't so bad. A lot of snow, but it hasn't like warmed up or anything. So the snow hasn't warped and melted and then frozen again. It's just really cold. Oh, and it turns out, according to DW in the chat, that it is Akira Yamaoka, the composer of Silent Hill. It's his birthday today as well. That's great. That's a great birthday to share.
Yeah.
I don't know who I share my birthday with. Celebrity birthdays.
The last time I looked mine up, it was kind of depressing. I think Tori Spelling has the same birthday as I do, and that's not worth bragging about.
Chris Rock. That's all right.
Yeah.
Ashton Kutcher. Garth Brooks. Okay. Oh, I don't like this one at all. Matthew Stafford.
Oh, wow.
Well, I mean, he seems like a nice guy. He's
He's always cheery when he's losing, if nothing else.
Charles Dickens. There you go. Beatrice Miller, 15 years old, some singer. I don't know who that is. That's James Spader.
Oh, that's great. That's a
I'll
great
take
one.
that one. Now we're getting to like the second row. Eddie Izzard,
Hmm.
Wes Borland,
Oh, that was a
uh,
Limp Bizkit reference I wasn't prepared for today.
Deborah Ann Wolf, the redhead who gets naked all the time in True Blood.
Okay.
Oh man, now we're really digging deep. I don't know who some of these people are. Okay, I'm giving up.
All right. I'm looking at mine real
feel like the
quick.
fact that I can say I was born on the same day as Wes Borland is that I will brag about that. I'm okay with that.
I also have a famous metal guitarist on mine. Kirk
Okay.
Hammett was born
There
on
you go.
my birthday. Owen Wilson,
Okay,
David Ortiz of the baseball.
sure.
Yeah, now it's getting kind of far down here. Imogene Coca, relevant actress. Everyone remembers her, I'm sure.
I feel
Delroy
like
Lindo, motherfuckers. He's November 18th. That's great. Kevin Nealon. All right, yeah. Once I hit Kevin Nealon, that's when I stopped caring.
Yep. That's around like me hitting Wes Borland was like, all right, that's it.
That's done.
Wash my hands of it. What have you been playing this week?
Oh God.
I know
well,
you've been playing that Jazzpunk.
that Jazzpunk. That Jazzpunk. Yeah, I played through that a second time this week after finishing it last week. Review of that will be up today just as soon as I can actually get the words together in the order I want them to go in for that review. But
How would
have
you
you played
describe
it at
that
all yet?
game? No, I played the intro up until
Okay.
taking your first dose of medication.
Okay, so you only played like 5 minutes of it, basically.
Yeah, but how would
Okay.
you like? It's a comedy action game, I guess, is like maybe the short of it. But what
Comedy
like,
adventure.
what is Jazzpunk?
It's okay, so it's a comedy, and
Okay.
it's a comedy in the sense that the mechanics of gameplay are much more about exploration and just finding the myriad things that just are super stupid in that game, which is basically everything. The entire world is built around you just discovering weird gag after weird gag after weird gag. Rapid fire kind of pace, very, I mean, they straight up say their inspirations are very similar to, the Naked Gun and Airplane and that style of sort of slapsticky rapid fire humor. And it surprisingly delivers on that in a way that most games have not been able to do. I mean, mechanically, it's probably very similar to something like a Gone Home. Obviously, a lot more insane. But it's the idea that there are things you can do that will progress the story as it is, but really the fun is just getting plopped into an environment and then spending half an hour just walking around like poking at things to see what the hell happens.
So, do you actually shoot anything, or is it literally
No.
just like here are worlds, you're walking around, see what we've left for you, and you'll probably miss most of it, and then want to go back and see what you missed?
Yeah, I mean, there are mini games where sometimes you will have to like move things around or poke at things, and there's not really any shooting exactly. Like, there's no gunplay. It's much more about interaction and exploration. And like the objectives you do get, it's usually just you pick up an item and move it somewhere, or connect it to some other item, and that's about it. It's very lightweight, and the thing that works about it, and the thing that is most special about it, is that the jokes are all really, really funny, and they're surprisingly participatory. Like, you're not just standing around watching funny things happen in front of you. Like, a lot of the gags actually let you kind of participate in them, which is surprising considering, interactive comedy is not a thing that's been done super well a lot over the years.
Have you played 30 Flights of Loving or Gravity Bone?
So I actually played 30 Flights of Loving this week.
I was going to say, before, almost, was it like, if you haven't written your review yet, it's probably worth playing one of, or both of those. It takes, all of, an hour to probably play both of them, because
Right.
it seems like Jazzpunk is cut from the same cloth.
It is and it isn't. The thing about 30 Flights of Loving is that it is not meant to be super funny. Like, it has kind of goofy bits in it, but it is like, they're telling kind of like a weird short story, but the progression of it and some of the art style, I would say, certainly lends itself toward that. But this is much more psychedelically minded. Like, it is aggressively bizarre, kind of belligerent in the way it delivers its gags, but like it also does it in this really strange deadpan that is amazingly consistent throughout the game. That is the one thing that I was most impressed by, is that for a game that is totally about just absolute like Dadaist nonsense, there is a very coherent, cohesive vision to that game that is kind of amazing.
Does it ever like? Because I feel like sometimes with comedy games or games that are comedic in nature, you get a little bit like, and here are jokes.
Yeah,
What's jokes? Like, is it like that, or does it seems like it's actually pretty well integrated into its version of its world that just happens to have jokes and it happens to be funny?
Yeah, there is a weird nightmare logic to that game where everything that happens in it is completely insane, but it also sort of makes a weird degree of sense within like the context of what they have presented you with. It's like, yeah, it's super random, but it feels like there is a pace and a delivery to it. Like they are, like the setups and the punchlines all feel like they come, with a degree of comic timing that a lot of games that just try to be crazy don't have. So it feels like there is a coherent vision to it from beginning to end. What is in that coherent vision is fucking out of its mind, but that's not a bad thing because it all kind of fits together in a way that you don't expect.
And it seems like, I know you had mentioned to me that the game is relatively on the short end of things, kind of like Octodad, another game,
Yeah.
Similar in aims, if not in execution, this week. And it doesn't surprise me that games that lean on humor also find themselves being slightly short, just because comedy is hard to do. It's not like when you develop like a shooting mechanic and it's like, oh, well, we'll just put it in another room full of guys and rearrange them in a new, interesting way. Like that's not really how jokes work.
No, and the real test of this game is that I finished it the first time around probably in about 2.5 hours. I was kind of bummed that it was over as quickly as it was, but the first thing I wanted to do was set aside some time to go back and play through it again to see if there was anything I missed. And there was like at least a solid half dozen mini games and gags that I missed going through the second time. But the key was, I did not mind at all playing through the bits I already had. They were still funny. I didn't laugh out loud in surprise, the way I did the first time around, but I still enjoyed them. And I think the mark of any great comedy is an ability to go back, hear those jokes again, and still find them amusing. That is where a lot of game comedy tends to fail, and that the grand sum total of the comedy is the surprise factor, and then going back, you're just like, eh. Here, yes, the surprise helps, and I think everyone should play that game knowing as little of it as possible. But it was totally worthwhile playing a second time. I enjoyed it nearly as much. It's ridiculous, but it's my kind of ridiculous, and I adored it pretty much from start to finish.
I think it's interesting that other games, as many as I can really think of, games that have leaned on humor and comedic in nature, still have a core gameplay mechanic to them. Octodad has the physics. Another one that people are mentioning in the chat that's also common is the No One Lives Forever series, which is also a shooter. It's often that you find comedy injected in as thematically or as an additional layer on top of an already sort of core gameplay mechanic. Whereas in Jazzpunk, like, it sort of feels like the jokes are like the mechanic, like the world, and it's constructed, and it's not like there's necessarily a traditional gameplay element here. It just happens to be an interactive world as opposed to like an animated film, which I guess is where you maybe might, I guess where this could have played out otherwise.
Yeah, it feels like the kind of thing that could have easily turned into some sort of weird animated short or something, but then was kind of, fleshed out into a much more interactive space for the purposes of this. But that's fine. Like, I like the idea that the comedy is sort of the draw of it, and that the comedy is, frankly, what the mechanics are based around making the comedy happen. So, whatever interaction you're doing, whatever exploration you're doing, it's all pretty easy. Like, none of the mini games are that hard. The finding the stuff that you need to do to progress the missions or whatever is not terribly difficult, but that's fine because it's not the kind of game that's meant to be challenging. Like, it's not a game that you're supposed to die in. It's a game that's supposed to set you up for a long laundry list of completely insane things to happen to you, and then once that's over with, it's done. And I think that it gets in and out in just about the amount of time it needed to. It starts to lose like just a bit of momentum toward the very end, but then it's kind of over with. So it's like, okay, yeah, you got what you needed out of it. And it never really makes sense, but it kind of does just within the nonsense logic of what, it kind of starts out with at the beginning. Like the story doesn't have a real resolution. It's not about, you really interacting with characters so much as you are just in this completely psychedelic, bizarre world and just letting stupid shit happen to you. And I think that is, if you can make that work, like, kudos to you, man. And this game makes that work in a way that I have not seen before.
Well, that's awesome. I've only played the intro, and I'm really, really, really looking forward to playing the rest, either tomorrow or on Sunday. But it's awesome that it nailed the mark. I mean, I know Vinny was psyched about it when he saw it at, I think, PAX Prime?
PAX East is when I think we first saw it.
Might have been. I think it was also at PAX again once it was kind of under the Adult Swim banner, which, man, could they, Adult Swim knows how to pick them. And I've been meaning to, I've been talking with them about doing a feature about their whole game selection process, because if you go through the games they have picked and the people they partner with, they're exceedingly smart about identifying eccentric, interesting game developers, giving them money, and publishing their games. Their lineup is actually pretty goddamn incredible.
Yeah, I have played precious little of the Adult Swim library at this point, but I mean, I had not really heard of Necrophone Games or Luis Hernandez before any of this stuff. I didn't really know what they were about. This is one of those games that feels like you kind of a discovery of like an interesting comic voice. That's not something you get a whole lot in video games. People actually who are good at comedy and that like actually have like kind of their own unique voice, as opposed to just kind of doing things like comedies they saw in movies or TV. Right. So this is one of those games that makes me really excited about whatever they're going to do next. Like they are a studio, and that is like Luis Hernandez and his co-writer, whose name I can't remember offhand. Those are guys that I am very excited to see more of what they have to offer. Yeah,
and I finished Octodad this week, so I managed to catch up with you.
How'd you end up feeling about that?
We talked a little bit on Instant Message about it, but yeah, the last third of that game I don't think works particularly well. I managed to make it through the stealth sections of that game and the suddenly an enemy is attacking you sections of that game without much incident. I ran into precious little frustration getting through those moments, because it seems like they're pretty easy to break, and the game, as long as you just kind of keep trucking, you can kind of make it through the sections. Yep. But I don't think it worked. It definitely felt like the developers were. I understand what they were going for. Young Horses, the studio, trying to find mechanical consistency with the storyline, which it makes sense. It would be a stealth section for what the story they were trying to tell at that point.
Right.
It just wasn't very fun. Whereas, man, I would have killed for another section that was as large and involved as the aquarium. Right. In which it's really the only time you get a world with multiple sections, and just every room you enter has like 1,000 things to interact with. The part where you're talking to your wife and there are like 8 different mini games for you to mess with right around you, and all of them are new prizes, and there are ties hidden around. Like that stuff was great, and I really, really enjoyed it. And the last third didn't really, because I was able to get through it pretty quickly, it didn't sort of ruin my impression of the game. I still had a fantastic time with it. Sure. It was mostly just kind of like, oh, that's too bad. Like that didn't really work.
It's not. It's not. For me, like the only section I had a real hard time with was that bit where you're like running across the tables at the very end, and like the chef is chasing you, and there's like fire everywhere. Like for some reason, I just could not make that part work, and that drove me absolutely insane. The stealth sections and stuff, I was able to do relatively quickly, especially once I found on the boat that beam that goes across the top of the ship, which basically lets you just walk across and not have to deal with any of the guys that are on the ground.
I didn't realize that, but yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, it's I haven't gone back and played that game since I reviewed it, but I want to go back and just play those opening chapters again and again because they're so fun, they're so ridiculous. Especially like the stuff in the early stuff in the aquarium. I really liked the bit in the playground with your son, where you're just kind of wandering around the giant jungle gym and stuff. I don't know. I sit there and I wonder, like, is there any way you can escalate that game, to like an actual gamey conclusion without doing something mechanical like what they tried to do with the stealth stuff and some of the boss fight stuff at the very end? And I'm not sure that there's really an easy answer for that, because I feel like if you just end the game with more of what that came in the first 2 hours, there's not really much of a build or a progression there. But
yeah, no, I think you're right. I think when they took on just the very premise of making this into a complete game as opposed to what they easily could have done was just, here's a bunch of, kind of like the opening chapters are just like, here's a room or like 2 rooms and here are some objectives to complete. They could have just done that. But you're right. I don't think that would have been particularly fulfilling, or it would have resulted in a lot of the narrative component happening exclusively in the cutscenes, and it doesn't seem like it would have matched the aims of what they wanted to do with the game. But it just seemed like, like maybe there was a better solution to their problem, but it's also not hard to imagine that there were just no real great solutions to how they could handle that sort of narrative arc of the game and have the player doing something different. And it's just, did you find any of the secret levels that require you to do like hyper precision, like I found one in the aquarium where you suck yourself down the toilet?
No, I guess I didn't actually find those. I went and, looking for like collecting a bunch of ties and stuff, but I don't think I found any actual hidden levels.
So yeah, I don't want to say too much in case people are going to play it, but basically I don't want to say how to access it anyway, but there's a way of going down a toilet, and then it takes you to this 2D section where you can only move left to right, but requires you to really make use of the tentacles in a way that you were never ever required to in the main game. That was actually really satisfying because it really it's, I don't know if precision is the right term, but you have to have purpose to the way you are using the tentacles, as opposed to with a lot of the stuff you can kind of fudge it a little bit and kind of slump your way and forward. But in these sort of flattened sections, you need to be on your game, know exactly when you are letting go of the left trigger, that you are swinging like you're using them kind of like you're going left to right. It's interesting. I also would sometimes find it incredibly infuriating because trying to be precise in that game was, I couldn't quite get it down. But yeah, I did enjoy it. I do still recommend people check it out, and it's weird that Jazzpunk and Octodad are coming out on the same day or same week.
Wait, I thought Octodad came out last week.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, it came out last week, Thursday.
Oh, okay. Well, it's so close to each other anyway.
Within a week of each other, we'll put it that way. Yeah, it is weird because those are, 2 very funny games, albeit in very just different ways, and obviously mechanically very different. But yeah, no, we're kind of living in a weird, interesting age where comedy is becoming a much more viable thing, it seems like, and I'm A-okay with that because, man, yes, there are funny games out there. People have been pointing out Portal and, a variety of other games, and yes, those are all very funny games, but how many of those come out a year? Like, maybe 2?
Yeah.
If that? So yeah, let's make this a much more regular thing. I'd be A-okay with that.
And I definitely think it's one of those, when a game has those aims, I am 100% okay with it being as long or as short as it wants to be, because that seems to be so important to a game with humor, and it seems so easy to kill the humor by just padding it out because the player's expectations for just video games are that they are a certain length. Watching the whole Metal Gear debate play out this week.
Sure.
And Game Informer said that they finished Ground Zeroes, which in Ground Zeroes case they're charging you $40. That's a little bit of a different situation.
That's another thing.
We can talk about it or not talk about that later.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting to have the dichotomy there of Jazzpunk, Octodad being like, in an Octodad's case, it kind of feels like maybe it goes on too long, despite it being as short as it is relative to other video games. And then you've got Ground Zeroes, where 2 hours is like people are like, wow, I'm paying for a demo.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look in the context of something like Jazzpunk. I mean, that game's $15, and if I had paid my own money for that, I would have had zero problem with it because I enjoyed it from beginning to end. It's 2.5 hours long, but at the same time, those 2.5 hours are all well implemented, well designed, very funny, and almost never lag at any point. So $15 for that's basically what you pay to go see a 3-hour movie at the theaters, maybe even more for that. So I got no problem with that whatsoever.
Oh. And you know what? We got South Park coming up.
We do. Yeah, that's next month, isn't it?
I really feel like I should stop being excited for that game. I feel like that's like what my two options being. It comes up March 11th or 18th.
Yeah, I think 18th.
Because the two scenarios of how that game's going to play out, I really think it's either going to be terrible or terrific. I think I don't think it's possible that game is middling. I think it's either. I guess the other option is that like the gameplay is just sort of and it's really funny. I guess that's possible. I guess that's the middle ground that might happen. But right. I really want to set my expectations low, but I find myself just getting excited for it.
I understand that. I mean,
really want it to be good, and I don't watch a lot of South Park these days, but South Park, when it's really good, I find exceedingly funny and is exactly my type of humor. And I like the way that they, even when I disagree with their politics and sometimes get upset that they think not choosing a side is their way of sidestepping an issue when it's really just pick a damn side. Mm-hmm. I just like their stuff, and I really want it to be good. And they clearly love games, and it's all we don't often get people that like games coming in to make a game and that being successful. And I would like that to be successful this time, I guess.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think everyone's wanted a good South Park game pretty much since forever, and there really hasn't been a great one at all. So, this kind of feels like, in a sense, it kind of feels like our last best hope for that to happen, because I don't think South Park's going to be on the air for too many more years at this point.
I probably played more than I'm willing to admit of South Park 64.
I mean, I played it. It was a game that you were willing to forgive at the time, is how I would describe that game, is you were willing to say, okay, well, this isn't very good, but it's something, and it's better than, not having any South Park games, I guess, and then you try to play it, like, anytime in the last decade, and you're like, no.
I mostly played Deathmatch. At the time, I was probably in either middle school or early high school, and poop jokes were pretty funny, and there were a lot of dumb weapons in that game, so my friends and I played a lot of that. And I mostly played a lot of them because around the time that Acclaim had the license, and they were producing, like, endless South Park games, there was, like, one a week coming out, it felt like. Acclaim was one of the early companies that, with the website I worked for, Gaming Age, which was the origins of the NeoGAF message boards, they were sending me basically everything. So, like, I played South Park Rally, and what were the other? What was the chef trivia game?
Oh, sure.
You know what I'm talking about.
I do know what you're talking about.
And man, South Park Rally came out on everything. Like,
it did.
I think I have like 8 copies of that game. It was like Dreamcast, N64, PlayStation, PC. Like, God, that came out on every single platform under the sun. Because that's just what Acclaim did. Acclaim, started as a port house before they moved into original development,
and making a lot of very bad video games.
Yeah, they made a lot of bad games. So, I don't know. I want that game to be good, I guess. I feel like we expressed an anxiety every couple of weeks, but now we're awfully close.
Yeah, we're actually getting there. We're almost at the end, hopefully. Speaking of laughs a minute games, last night I also, after I finally just said I can't stare at this Jazzpunk review anymore, I have to do this in the morning.
Chef's Love Shack.
No, okay, that wasn't what I played, but yes, you're right. Chef's Love Shack, that was that game. I did play that. That was terrible.
Okay. Sorry.
I played the second episode of Wolf Among Us.
Yeah, I did that last night as well.
What did you think of where things are headed in that game, without spoiling too much?
I'm excited. I like where they're going with the story. I think they have done a really exceptional job of the cliffhangers. Mm-hmm. I think they do really like a good cliffhanger in any story is it recontextualizes what's come before and then gets you excited for what's next.
Right.
You may not have a better understanding of what happened before, but it makes you rethink everything that's come before it, and that was true, I think, in the first episode. It is true in the second episode, and this episode's really short.
It is. It's about 80 minutes, I think.
I am reluctant to too often get into complaints or debates about game length, but I do think for the amount of time that we have waited for a second episode, that episode was not beefy enough to justify what has been a 3 or 4 month wait.
Sure.
And especially because it's been frustrating for how little communication Telltale has given over the delivery of that episode. Originally that was coming out before the end of the year, and then it's early next year, and then it's the end of the month, and then it's early next month. I realize the game production is something that is constantly moving, but they're a couple years in. They're selling things called season passes, and I think they, more than anyone else, are actually using a season model, given that they're episodic. And there has to be a middle ground between promising a date that they can reasonably stick to and just lying and letting it. Lying is a strong word, but promising something and then
fudging it. They're
fudging it over and over again. So anyway, I didn't mean to go down that path. But what did you think of the episode?
I liked it. I don't think it's insubstantial for what it is. I think that it progresses the story just about as far as it probably could, while still leaving a reasonable cliffhanger for the player. I agree that it did kind of suck that it took so long to get to that. To what is not a terribly long episode. I think I just over 75, 80 minutes or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the direction they're taking the characters in. I like the fact that it is, despite the fact that it has this fantastical premise, it is at its core basically just a police procedural, but a really interesting one. And I think that the mystery they're weaving around that stuff is grim. And I don't feel like it's going to, I think without saying anything, I think that what they hung this last episode on for the next time, I don't feel like that's going to be the grand sum of this whole case. I don't think that the direction they're heading in, trying to find this killer, is the only thing that they're going to do for the next 3 episodes. I feel like there's more coming out of that, something a little bit grander. But for some dumbass reason, I did not see where they were going with that coming, and I feel like I really should have.
No, I didn't. I didn't see it, and my wife gave an audible gasp when the reveal, let's say, happened in the second episode.
Yep.
And the one thing I will say that is sort of complimentary to your point is that not a lot actually happens in the second episode, and I don't even mean that.
It's a lot of table setting.
It's a lot of table setting and a lot of really deep character development for a set of characters. And I don't want to say who, because we'll just leave it at that. But the first episode, one of the things that was fun, but I was hoping that they wouldn't continue to do throughout the entire series is, Fables takes place in this place called Fabletown that is separate from the Meadows or the Meadowlands, which is where they're from. I don't know that. Anyway, they're in a version of New York City where they cast magic so that humans don't know they're there. Mm-hmm. And there's constantly this thing where you'll be introduced to a character and it's like, oh, well, who are they? Which is this Sleeping Beauty? Which character is this that I know from an old actual Fable? Which is fun, but that would get really old if that was the main conceit going forward. And they do a little bit of that in the second episode, but they do a whole lot of characters you've already met and had that initial sort of, oh, this is that person. Then who are they about? What is their backstory? Why are they here? What are their complications? People aren't doing well in Fabletown. Shit's bad. People are using drugs. They call them Mundies is the Muggle equivalent in the Fable universe. It's what they call, I guess, non-magical folk or non-fable folk, and so they have allusions to Mungie drugs and things of that nature. And I like all that stuff, and that definitely tickles, the same stuff that I found really fun about Harry Potter. But it's just episode 2 is a lot of character development, and even though it was short, I wanted more. I agree with you that it ended in a perfect spot.
Mm-hmm.
You learn a lot about the characters in a way that you're right when you think about it. There's really not. I'm sure there's a much grander thing going on that it's working towards, but you certainly don't have a whole lot of indications of that quite yet. And instead, it's very focused on like these very specific set of killings that don't feel as grand as you normally expect from a game story.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of details that you can see they're working toward. Like there are some consistent visual things that they haven't really addressed very much. There are certain characters starting to rear their head that they haven't really delved too far into. They're just starting to show kind of a little bit more of the seedier side of Fable life. So yeah, there's a lot there I think that they can still explore.
Yeah, there's nudity in episode 2.
There's some naked lady bits in there. Just throwing that out there for the sensitive. But my only hope, my only concern is that I really don't want to be coming to episode 5 come like December. I know that they are probably stretched thin. They have this Game of Thrones thing they're working on. They still have Walking Dead that they're working on. I just like this episodic thing cannot survive constant 2 to 3 month breaks between episodes, because it's just you lose the interest and you lose the excitement. Like it took me a little longer than I would have liked to get into the second episode, because I had to kind of remember what everything was and what was going on. And while they have the previously on thing at the beginning to kind of remind you, still, it's like you have to get into a rhythm with it, and I feel like it's real hard to maintain that rhythm when you've got 10 to 12 weeks between episodes.
I also think if they could just be a little more direct in, like, even if they're gonna say like, look, then episode 3 is coming 4 months from now, but it'll be out on May 1st. At least if you can plan around it. I think the frustration, definitely comes from just all of a sudden, you open your email on a Monday and it's like, the episode's out. I just don't think that works really well. That works against them, I think, for building anticipation for the episodes. It works against the player because they can't properly get ready for it. And, yeah, it's just, I don't have the will to wait until a whole season is out, but I believe if you do have that will, that is probably the way to play Telltale games.
I think so,
just to wait for the whole season to be out.
Yeah, I like being a part of the constant conversation and kind of being up on whatever's going on, but that is increasingly difficult as you spread more time out between episodes.
Yeah. So that's
games.
That's all I played. I beat Banner Saga, but we've already talked about that. And I think I'm gonna record no quick look went up on the site. San Francisco dropped the ball, so I might record one just to do one, because I really liked that game. I think it had some problems, and it was Stoic Games, I believe, is the developer. Reached out to me on Twitter after I tweeted about finishing it, and I was like, hey, what about part 2? And they're like, it's probably next year. So
yeah,
probably next year, which makes sense. My guess, I would guess that it comes out like every January or February.
That sounds about right.
I would bet I bet we'll hear a lot about it next fall. We'll get a release date next winter, but January seemed to work very well for them in terms of getting attention and not being a lot of games out. So my guess would be part 2 would be out next January. And there's another game that I think ends very well. I really liked the way that part 1 ends, and they set up this big grand world, but you do have a sort of a nice conclusion. Even if I don't like how the fight played out, but I think story-wise and some of the sacrifices that happen in pursuit of closing out that story, that game's a bummer, and it seems like chapters 2 and 3 are just going to be more bummers.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to have a real happy ending even by the time they get to the 3rd chapter. I think that thing's that's gonna be an oppressive one, but I don't know, whatever. It's so good, I don't care.
Yeah. All right, let's run through some news. It's already 10:15, but Alex, you need to tell me about what you did yesterday. You need to confess your sins. I don't even know quite. I'm not even quite sure why you went, but when you told me you were going, I said nothing.
So
when you told me Alex was leaving for the Sonic press conference, I said nothing.
I went because Jeff forwarded me an email a couple weeks ago and was like, "Hey, you should go to this Sonic thing," and I said,
"Okay, now this makes a lot more sense."
Yeah, and I said, "All right." why not? You know, it's a dumb press conference. The thing was blocked out for like 3 hours, and I was like, it's not going to take that long. There was no way, and it didn't. I mean, they basically blocked off 2 hours for people to wait in line to give 5-minute interviews, and that was about it. But so I went because I figured, what the hell, why not? That is the gist of my decision making, and I didn't know what they were going to announce at all. I had no real indication of what they were on about. I'd seen the rumors of some crazy multi-platform Sonic thing, but that were shot down. So, you know, getting in there, when they announced Sonic Boom, the first thing in my mind was,
Sonic Boom!
I cannot believe it has taken this long for them to call a Sonic game Sonic Boom.
It's a pretty good name.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. The second thing I noticed was that they really thought they had made radical changes to the Sonic universe in what they had done here. They spent a really long time talking about these character design changes that more or less amounted to a scarf and some athletic tape. And
the way you made it sound was like, I mean, they went on and on about this, like making as though
they literally unveiled it twice. First, they showed, like, they pulled down these curtains on these cardboard cutouts that were on either side of the stage, and then they went again. It's like, and here they are, and then they appeared on the video screen behind them, and they spent a really long time, like, going over each character's individual changes. Like, they were some, like, wild, crazy shit, and they weren't just fucking Rostifying this shit by 10% or something. Like, literally, it was like a long string of Lindsay Nagels, like, trying to, you know, edgy cute the shit out of Sonic and explain to, like, you know, why they have taken this shit to the next level or whatever. It was horrifying. So, they go through this whole spiel. They spend a really long time talking about the toy licensing. They spend an excruciatingly long time talking about the TV series, which honestly looks a lot like someone at Sega saw an episode of Adventure Time and said, well, why don't we just do that with Sonic? Without ever actually taking the time to understand what it is that makes Adventure Time, like, whimsical or funny or crazy or cute or whatever. They just said, no, it's like crazy, so we'll have Sonic do crazy stuff. Eggman's going to sue him in court now. That's funny, right? Yeah. So, and then they showed the game trailer, and that was about all they really said about the game, was just, here's the trailer, and it's got, you can play as 4 characters. That's this game. And the sad part is the game doesn't even look horrible. Like, what they showed didn't look awful or unbearable by any stretch. It just looked like, okay, cool, you made a different Sonic game again.
It's built in UE3. Or no,
CryEngine. Yeah, CryEngine 3, which was surprising.
What?
Yeah, I know. Okay, that's what you're doing with the CryEngine. You're making a Sonic game. Cool. But yeah, like 80%, I would say, was spent talking about things other than that game they were making, and then what they showed of the game was basically just that trailer. So, really well designed, coherent event that, you know, clearly was targeted at Game Press and not just something that was written for, like, an investor meeting.
Oh, that's really good. I'm so glad you went to that.
So Sonic Boom, that's coming, I guess. It's Sonic.
What an epic waste of your time. That was wonderful.
You know, whatever. It's a couple hours of my day. It's not the end of the world, and I got a funny story out of it. So that happened. So
we run a stupid website.
We really do. So yeah, that was my day yesterday. Let's not talk about Sonic anymore. Let's talk about literally anything else. How about that?
Okay.
The DICE Awards happened last night.
Yeah, The Last of Us won some stuff, I guess.
A lot.
The DICE Awards tend to be AAA kind of patting themselves on the back. So
and
some people pointed out that, you know, what does it say when those kinds of awards are giving Forza, I think, was like best something.
Best racing game.
Plants vs. Zombie 2 is best mobile game. Like, I mean, like I said, those awards have tended in the past to be AAA kind of patting themselves on the back. So I wouldn't read too much into that stuff.
No.
And who cares about the DICE Awards?
Yeah.
I like DICE, though.
Rezo just asked, what is the actual boom part of Sonic Boom? The boom is how extreme and edgy and cool he is, again, now. Despite the fact that he is exactly this. It's Skrillex. Skrillex, this is the heavy boom.
What if that was it? That would be great.
God, when Skrillex started playing in that trailer, like, everyone around me, we all just looked at each other like, holy shit, it's like mom and dad got a hold of some kid's iPod. Holy fuck.
Valkyrie to become an Oculus Rift launch title.
Yeah, so talk a little more about that. We'll talk about what eValkyrie is. What's going on there?
eValkyrie started out as EVR. It was an internal experiment by CCP, who makes EVE Online, that was debuted last year at EVE Online's FanFest, which Drew and I were in attendance for and got to play around with EVR. The basic premise of it at the time, and my guess is this would hold true now, is that you start out in this kind of capital ship. You get shot out as a tiny little pilot, and you're using an Xbox controller or some sort of gamepad to control the ship, but to lock on to your targets, you're tilting your head around, and it works extremely well. Feels very natural. It feels like you're playing like a more in-control version of like a Res or a Panzer Dragoon, and you're floating around this incredibly detailed, super fun 3D space, and it's amazing to be like, okay, I need to be heading off like to the upper right, so I'm going to speed off in that direction, but I'm going to turn my head around, target the guy who just zoomed past me, hit him with missiles, but still be going forward. Because often when you play games, you can't do that, right? You're having to do if pointing in the direction of the enemy that you're going after, and in EVR you could do both, and it felt very natural, a little dizzying, but that was mostly due to the tech being very early. It's the old Oculus Rift, the one that I have and most people have, not one of the new updated version with less latency and pure or proper high definition. And so they're turning that into a proper game, whatever that means. And it's the first confirmed launch title for the Oculus Rift, and also Oculus is going to be co-publishing it. So I would imagine if they're announcing deals like this, we must be on the path to learning more about when the Oculus is actually coming out. It seems odd that you'd be confirming publishing deals and using the phrase launch title unless we are going to hear more about what they're actually going to do. Although I suspect we may not. I wouldn't be surprised if we heard more at GDC to get developers more prepared. But E3 or whereabouts seems like the kind of time where they would want to make a big splash. E3 is when CNN and all sorts of other places are showing up to highlight what's going on in video games. So that seems like the time for them to actually unveil that stuff, especially if it's going to happen this year, which not super confident about. Like sometimes you'll see stories and it's hard to tell if that's just the authors extrapolating or assuming, but it's always kind of been phrased as like late 2014, early 2015. You would think they want to hit the Christmas rush and be a part of that, but it's really hard to tell. They seem to be playing the long game, and they're okay with playing the long game, and that seems to be working with them so far, I guess.
Yeah, I have strong doubts about them actually making that device out this year. Like I feel like that's going to be like an early 2015 thing at the earliest at this point, but I can see why they would maybe try to go for that. But I also don't know how hot a Christmas item that would be. That feels like one of those things. I mean, I don't know how to describe it other than just make this reference, but sort of like Guitar Hero, where it's like you launch it, and then some people really like it, and then a lot of people really like it, and it just kind of grows. That doesn't feel like it's going to be like a real hot ticket, everyone has to buy it right away kind of item. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean that's when I wrote a predictions article a couple of weeks back. One of the things that I mentioned was that I think VR takes steps this year, but doesn't really kind of come into its own later, and Oculus has changed the conversation about VR, and I think whether VR takes off or not, it's about to get its one legitimate shot at being a part of interactive technology and changing how we interface with a whole lot of things. Whether it comes to fruition, too early to say, but Oculus has changed the conversation enough that it's going to get its time in the sun the same way, like 3D did in the last couple of years, and then we'll see whether it sticks. But I am not super confident that Oculus on their own can make this work, and there's nothing about what Oculus has done so far to prove that they're going to be able to market a consumer product, and I don't think enough people own powerful PCs to justify this device existing. I think they're talking about making it work on mobile, so if it could work on an iPhone and an Android device, I think they start to get closer to larger parts of an audience getting interested in owning a device like that. I think the real clutch point is someone like Sony needs to come out with either whether they're going to partner with Oculus or they're going to come out with their own device, because I don't think it matters too much. I believe that VR, this is I'm just sort of armchair projecting. Like I don't know for sure, but it's informed by having discussions with folks who would know. No matter what Sony does, no matter what anyone else does with a piece of VR technology, the sort of base level of how you develop a game for it means that if you make it for one VR technology, you're going to be able to reasonably port it to another.
Right.
And a company like Sony that is in consumer products, like, and then people own a console and you buy accessories for consoles, and you don't have to worry about performance because the developers are going to handle that for you. I really don't see VR really taking off in a meaningful way until it's partnered with a console in some way. I think if it was just linked to a PC and running on high-end PCs in order so that you can have, with VR, like you have to have dual displays. Like you have to have the game running twice, which most machines are just not going to be capable of doing unless you have a beefy gaming PC. And that just seems like a tall order to ask of people, which is why I think they're obviously doing the mobile route, because that is essentially that can be their console. Like if people can just connect that to their iPhone, then that's a way they can experience it. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of barriers, and I think getting a company like Sony in there or whoever would go a long way towards legitimizing that to a larger audience.
Surely. I have absolutely nothing to add to that. You were spot on, I think.
Amazon bought Double Helix.
That was the one I was just about to read off. Yeah, that is fucking crazy. I mean, we've heard, rumblings over recent months that, Amazon wanted to get into games in a big way. This is, I guess...
There is someone gave me a heads up, let's say, that there is an Amazon Game Studios already.
Okay.
So if you go to games.amazon.com, they've actually been publishing little mobile games for a while. So this is not something. It's actually looks like. Trying to see. It looks like this has been around since 2012. So it's Amazon Game Studios is not a brand new thing. I didn't realize that it was already established and they were publishing games. So anyway, yeah. Keep going. I interrupted.
Well, no, I was just going to say, we'd been hearing for a while that they wanted to get into games in a much more substantial way for a while, and I didn't know anything about that studio, but this is the first time, now we have like straight up Amazon has bought a goddamn game studio, and it is the makers of Killer Instinct, which is interesting because when I think of studios that would be like a hot property to go after, Double Helix is not the first one that pops to mind. I mean, Killer Instinct was a lot better, I think, than anyone actually expected it to be. And
Strider looks good.
Strider was good. I played it. It is some Strider-ass Strider. But not really knowing what Amazon's end game at this point is. Like, do they want to, just publish games? Like, do they want to develop their own games and just be a publisher? Like, is there some sort of hardware thing that they're looking at down the road? Probably not. But not really knowing what their end game is, it's hard to know what to make of that specific move, because Double Helix is a studio that's had some successes and some non-successes, and they are, they've obviously recently done some good stuff. But I don't really know what kind of direction this would actually fit into.
I would disagree that they're not after a hardware end game.
Okay.
I do think that part of the rumors that I have heard and that have been around before is that they are forking Android to develop their own actual Android-based console to put out. How much they get behind that, does that become sort of like a Kindle Fire-esque thing? It's really hard to say. We just don't know enough about what they're doing. And I guess it's possible they won't ship the console they've been working on, but they are absolutely working on an Android fork that
interesting
is meant to compete in some way. But yeah, I think it is hard to tell. But I think when you buy Double Helix, I think that makes their intentions a lot clearer. I do think that makes them very serious about what they intend to do. And when Amazon enters a market, they don't tend to pussyfoot around. Like, they tend to be very aggressive, and they have an ability to be very aggressive, but like, they can't compete in the traditional ways on game consoles, right? Like, game consoles are about software.
Right.
They're not, like, if they enter the market with a $50 Android console, like, that doesn't mean anything. Like, they have to have games to go alongside with that. So I'm curious if what this Double Helix purchase entails or indicates is maybe a bunch of acquisitions going forward to start building up that lineup, because they can put out whatever console they want, but unless there are games on it, then it's just destined to be another Android console that nobody cares about or uses to run emulated games on. So they need to actually have the software to justify that, and that's a much harder proposition and is different than what Amazon has done in the past when it comes in to like disrupt a market, and that's the part that I'm not quite sure what their path is on that.
Yeah, well, the extra weird thing is that if they are in some way looking toward, an eye toward actually being some kind of hardware manufacturer, console producer, serious game publisher, they're still in a situation where they're selling everyone else's games. So I don't really know. I guess the end game I'm having a hard time figuring out is like what Amazon wants to be when all is said and done. Like, do they want to be the place that makes their own games, sells their own games, and also sells everybody else's game stuff? Or is this like some sort of like larger weird move toward like trying to kind of, crush the competition so they don't have to worry about selling everyone else's stuff down the road? I mean, I don't think it's going to get to that point, but when I look at the direction things are headed in, I don't completely understand the point of what they're trying to do. But I guess it being this early, I wouldn't necessarily.
Ritzkrieg Rap points out, what if they're planning a streaming game service so they don't need to worry about selling a console? Seems pretty them. That's
viable.
That's certainly viable. Amazon has an extremely profitable and prolific cloud service. AWS, I think, is the short name for that. So the idea that Amazon would then run some sort of streaming service that allowed them to easily bring on a lot of games, or not even have to port them in a substantial way. They could be streaming the PC versions of those games. That's certainly a possibility. That maybe their end game is running an Android console that just plugs into an Amazon streaming service that plugs into your Amazon Prime account, and that sort of sounds pretty diabolical when I start connecting the dots.
A little bit diabolical.
Because they're about to just increase the price of Amazon Prime, and you would think that as Amazon Prime matures, they're going to add more features to it. But yeah, I mean, an Amazon Prime gaming service. Because I use the Amazon Video pretty often. It's how I keep justifying Amazon Prime.
I do it for the shipping mostly.
Well, I do it for that too. Wow, that made me just rethink that whole thing.
Yeah, right.
Anyway,
let's just for the next like 15 minutes or so.
I don't have anything else to say. I was hoping my would lead to some sort of revelation, but it's mostly just making me go I'm curious to see what they're doing. It's always exciting to see other companies come in and, if not necessarily disrupt, make everyone deeply uncomfortable about existing business models, existing ways of doing things, and the increasing ubiquity of hardware means that more companies can come in and kind of do their own thing. So, more power to them. Let's see how it works. I'm happy to see another one enter the market. Hopefully, they just don't end up in the dustbin of Android consoles that has come before them. But they are certainly more prepared than we to try and give it a shot.
Yeah. This probably is a good time for us to start asking for some questions, I would think.
Yeah, if folks want to bring in some questions, we'll try and answer one or two before we end this out. Double Fine doing another Amnesia Fortnite that includes Adventure Time creator Pendleton Ward pitching a bunch of games. Go watch his videos.
They're pretty great.
The pitches are hilarious. He's actually put way more thought into them than you might think. They are not just sort of like, and here's a funny joke. Like, he's thought out mechanics and control schemes, and it's pretty cute.
For a dude who loves video games as much as he does, I'm a little bit bummed about how mediocre the Adventure Time games have been thus far, though I imagine he also doesn't have a whole lot to do with that. Which is
I bet not.
Did you see the pitch for the straight-up Cabin in the Woods slasher movie that the guy wants to make?
No.
So one of the dudes who's, I think, internal at Double Fine wants to make a straight-up Friday the 13th style teenagers in the woods being hunted by a serial killer game.
Oh my god, I have to what?
Yeah, I forget what I forget what it was called. Maybe someone in the chat can bring it up. But that looked real. I mean, it's a real simple pitch, but it is an effective one. So I would think that would
doing
be
a Google search for Double Fine serial killer didn't bring up anything.
Oh,
I'm sure someone will mention it in the chat.
yeah. Oh, and you saw that your nemesis has now moved on from Double Fine. He's now moved.
Yeah, Chris Remo has left Double Fine to join his friends Jake Rodkin and Sean Vanneman at Campo Santo. I believe that's how you pronounce the name. Sounds like in a position more than just composer. He did the music for Gone Home. Terrific soundtrack. I love the music in that game. And yeah, he's going to work with them. He co-wrote The Cave and worked on Space Base DF9. I think.
And he did the music for 30 Flights of Loving too, I think.
Yes, terrific soundtrack for that as well. He's very talented. Chris Remo on his Spelunky play, but hail Chris Remo on moving on and doing something cool with those guys. Looking forward to seeing Ollie Moss's video game. I want to see Ollie Moss art in a video game, and I'm looking forward to that.
What Could Go Wrong is the name of that pitch, by the way.
Greg, that's such a good name.
Yeah, it's called What Could Go Wrong, and it's just like there's a YouTube video someone just linked to in the chat if you want to take a look at it after we're done here. It looks pretty. It sounds like a great idea.
I'm going to do that. Let's see. Call of Duty now takes 3 years to make. 3 studios keeping it annual. The next game comes from Sledgehammer. I had heard about that about 6 months ago. I think that's a good change. Hopefully that results in that series getting better.
Here's hoping.
I've heard some things. But
yeah.
I will keep my mouth shut. Christolis, are either of you planning to check out Bravely Default? I would like to. It sounds like Brad is actually going to give it a decent shot and do a quick look on the site. Also, I'll say it out loud and hopefully guilt him into it if he somehow forgets. But yeah, curious. I've heard good things about it. I've meant to download the 3DS demo because it is a side story, but I've also heard the demo is terrible and not very indicative of the quality of the final game. So I don't know. But yeah, I'm curious. I have not played a JRPG in a while. But if I got to pick one this year, I want to get around to playing Persona 4 The Golden, which I'm hoping to do this summer. So we'll see. I would like to, but my guess is, Alex, that you have no interest.
Yeah, not personally. It's not really my kind of thing. But I've heard from people who are well versed in these types of games that it is very, very good. So take that for whatever it's worth.
Yeah. People asking Dorky Moore, not game related, but maybe you'll care, Alex. Like, are the Olympics on your radar?
No.
Yeah, me either.
Other than the Sochi stories from journalists and the constant just hyperbolic fear of what the hell could go wrong during those games, I am not actually watching the Olympics Olympics. Like, first, I watched exactly 60 seconds of ice dancing last night, and that is probably all of the Olympics I will watch. So that's me.
I'm going to an Olympics watching party tomorrow that I'm just... No, tonight. Today, Friday.
Why?
I don't know. But it's all my friends are going, and we're just going to drink, and it's my birthday. So it was more... This was someone already reserved this night, like, to do a thing, and I wasn't going to be the guy that's like, I'm going to play the trump card that it's my birthday, and no one's going to go to your thing. Like,
haha, fuck your Olympics.
That's
not my birth.
That's not nice. So I'm having people over on Saturday. Oh, here's a question from me to you, and then the chat can help as well. So the general plan for my birthday was like, I'm not really into the whole, like, I'll probably have a hangover on Sunday. Like, let's be clear. But I'm not really into the whole, like, let's get crazy drunk just to drink. Like,
right.
Sort of over that part. But wanted to have a bunch of people over, and I've got this brand new, well, I guess relatively new TV, and I want to play a bunch of, like, local multiplayer games on it, and I'm going to buy a bunch of stuff from the cards office and then do tournaments and give out card stuff to the victors.
Okay.
So now I just need to figure out what games to play. Obviously, like, most people that are coming over are, halfway competent or versed in games, but I'm going to have a lot of people that aren't. And so something like Samurai Gun might be a little too mechanically complex. Nidhogg might work, but I'm mostly trying. I have a pretty decent library of games, and I have a couple of friends that are coming that have a good library of games. So I'm trying to figure out what games make the most sense. Like Mario Kart's a pretty standard one that a lot of people play and understand. Bomberman, I feel like, is a good one as well. That's like easy to understand. But I'm trying to. Can you think of any others that would make?
Well, I know it's not out yet, but I think it is out soon. I did get some time this week after a board game night with some friends to play some Sports Friends, which is a real good, you don't have to know a whole lot about what you're doing to get into it kind of game.
That's true. I have an early build of that on my computer.
So there you go.
I should plug in Sports Friends. That's a good one.
That is a good one, I think. Other like simple competitive stuff.
Oh, someone said you don't know Jack. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Is there a PC version of that?
Pretty sure there is. Double check that, but I'm pretty sure there is one.
One of my favorite Ryan Davis memories is that for a TNT sometime last year, we played You Don't Know Jack. It was if people remember, it's the one where we had might have been the first time I brought out the electric zapper thing.
Yeah.
I think Karen was there, Dave's sister, and for some reason, Ryan had to rebuy it, and he somehow rebought it on my account, but was pretty sure he bought it on his account, and then I didn't notice until a week later that $75 worth of purchases made on my card. It's just Ryan buying You Don't Know Jack, and then every single DLC. And then me having to expense it because Ryan had purchased all of that stuff on my card.
Oh God!
It was really funny.
That's
really funny.
Classic.
Yep.
I'm trying to think of something else, but I think You Don't Know Jack is a really good one. I think
You Don't Know Jack, that's a good one. I'm trying to check Steam right now.
Yeah. There's
You
something.
Don't Know Jack. Perfect.
There's definitely something I'm just not thinking of, and I don't know what it is.
Oh man, there's a lot of versions of You Don't Know Jack on here, old ones.
You want to go as recent as possible.
I think this is the new one. Yeah, that's a good idea. I didn't even think about that. Oh, that's a great idea. That's gonna be a lot of fun.
Cool. Yeah, that's what I got right now. I'm sure there are a million things I'm just not thinking of at the moment, but that's what I was able to throw off the top of my head.
Folks have other ideas. Shoot me a PM. I'm trying to. I gotta get the game.
Dive Kick.
Yeah, Dive Kick could be a good one.
It's a good drunk fighting game, I think. So
that's true. Cool. All right. Well, what are you up to this weekend?
Let's see. Today I'm gonna have Jazzpunk review finally done. I'm gonna stare at it. I'm gonna make it work somehow. We'll figure it out. And this weekend I don't really have any significant plans. Just gonna kind of catch up on a couple of games that I haven't finished. I'm gonna play. I think I'm gonna try and finally blow through the last of the Ollie Ollie levels that I haven't gotten through. And during jury duty this week, I got to that was pretty much what I spent most of the time in the waiting room doing. So I'm gonna try and finish that off. I'm still gonna do that Super Mario Brothers 2 and Bombastica here in the next few days. The jury duty kind of screwed up my schedule this week, but I will get it done. And then Monday, actually, other than our show in the morning, which we'll talk about in a second, I will be on Aubrey Sitterson's Cheap Heat podcast Monday night following Monday Night Raw, where we will talk some wrestling. So if you are into that at all, I will be there to talk about that. So
sweet.
That's what I got coming up. What do you got?
I have to get the rest of my apartment together. Half the reason of having people over for a birthday is to give Katie and I the last put up all the stuff that you wanted to put up in your place because now people are coming over and they're going to judge you. So
sure.
So I got to get the rest of the stuff together this weekend. So that'll be most of it. Probably be hungover on Sunday. So hopefully on Sunday I'll finish. I think playing Jazzpunk hungover on the couch with a space heater sounds pretty good. I need to play that and I need to play Republic. So those are, if I play anything this weekend, that'll probably be those two. And I'm half considering. There's not really any strategy games for me to play right now. I just finished Banner Saga, and people were like, hey, you should be an idiot and just dive off the deep end and play one of those really complicated, Crusader games. That sounds like a really dumb idea, so I might try and do that.
I feel like that's one of those things you're either going to spend 5 minutes with and just go, nope, done, or it's going to completely destroy you.
Yeah, so I guess maybe I'll try and find out. So That'll be my weekend. On Monday, we will be joined by none other than Jim Sterling, who was in the news quite a bit this week for he doesn't like that new Dungeon Keeper game very much. Which we didn't talk about that, but that game, that game has some issues.
Yes, it does.
The way it
Also
handles reading.
He's also a voice actor in Jazzpunk.
All right. Is it obvious?
I don't know. I mean, all the voices in that game are so heavily modulated that nothing's really that obvious. But he does play a few different characters. So
interesting. All right. Well, hey, we'll have something to talk about. So yeah, he'll be joining us on a Monday, and that's when I will talk to you next, Alex.
I will talk to you on Monday. Ooh.
See ya.